So, let's see. All right.
Ms. Crooks just asked that I send her the link again, and I just did. She should be joining shortly.
She's in it.
Yeah, actually, I'm here. I had to log on with my phone. I found the link, but I'm here.
Yes, ma'am.
Glenn, how does it sound now? I think I fixed it. I hope I did.
Yes, sir. This is Phyllis. You're auditable, but you're just not as loud or something as everybody else. But I mean, you audible.
All right, well, let me see if I can fix that. That's another thing I can adjust.
I can hear him all right. I can hear you all right.
All right, Tracy, you should be getting a link.
All right, I think I fixed it. Is that better now, Glenn? Oh, he's connecting again.
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, I think you're good to go.
All right, Ingrid, you ready?
Yes. Are we in the right room? Usually we move into a different room.
Well, we didn't go into the breakout room to begin, but we're ready.
Okay, great. A meeting of the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners Occupational Therapy Advisory Committee pursuant to lawful notice is duly convened and called to order at 10:08 a.m. on November 15th, 2024 via Zoom virtual video. Please note any comments by the public are welcome and can be emailed to publiccomment@lsbme.la.gov. Dr. Van, please confirm that you have verified the identity of all tele and video conference participants.
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Is the sound clear and audible to the public and those on the tele and video conference?
I have been assured it is, ma'am.
All right. All additions to the executive or public agenda must be made presently, as we will no longer make additions to the agenda after the close of the public session. I'm now going to review the mission. The mission of OTAC is ultimately to protect the public, i.e. the consumers of occupational therapy, by regulating competent practice and upholding the standards set forth by the governing rules and regulations. Members present are as follows. Glenn, I'm terrible with last names, y'all. Glenn, tell me your last name again.
Wallace.
Thank you. Glenn Wallace, Kelly Brandon, Carolyn Murphy, Kim Solari, Relina Crooks. Did I say Kelly Brandon? I usually ask Amy to confirm we have a quorum. Do we?
You have 5 members present.
We have 5. Okay, then we do have a quorum.
Actually have 6 now.
Okay. Who just joined?
You have Kim, Relina, and Glenn, Kelly, you, and Carolyn. That makes
Oh.
6.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Glenn's in there twice, but he doesn't count twice. He only counts once.
Also present at the meeting are Dr. Vincent Collada, Executive Director of LSBME. Patricia Wilton is on.
Miss Wilton is still recovering from her surgery. She won't be with us.
Okay. Amy Christo, Tracy Morrow, IT Specialist, Sandra Hawkins, LSB Licensed Analyst, Phyllis Johnson, Licensing Analyst Supervisor. And is Jacinta on?
Jacinta is on, and Miss Morrow from IT is on.
And Tracy Morrow, yes. I do have one item that I would like to add to the agenda before we move forward, and that is to add sort of a problem-solving discussion of the communication barriers that there have been between the chair and members of OTAC and the staff of LSBME. So I would like to motion to add a discussion of the best communications to the agenda. Is there anyone who could second that?
I'll second it.
Any public comment?
None at this time.
All in favor of adding this item to the agenda? Please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, this agenda item has been added. But we will start with the old business of approving the minutes from the meeting on August 16th, 2024. Let's see, I guess, let me share with did I pull
I
it
can
up?
share the screen.
I think I just did.
Okay.
Can you all see the excuse me, the agenda? Is that what everyone sees?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay, let me scroll down to our minutes from last month. Here we go. Not last month. This was all the way back in August. Our September meeting had to get canceled, and then our October meeting had to get canceled. So it's been a while. So at our August meeting, we had an update from the rules from Patricia, who said she hoped to have the rules submitted before Labor Day. We went into executive session, talked about streamlining licensing processes, and that the picture requirement was going to be dropped. We discussed the advisory opinion on use of telehealth, and we voted on that to accept that. We had discussed something from the Workforce Development Division. We started a discussion about clarification of OT practitioners evaluating without a referral, but that was decided to be continued to this meeting, and then we adjourned. Could anybody please approve these minutes from the motion to approve the minutes?
Right, now I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, and a second.
Kim will second.
Any public comment?
No, ma'am, there are no public comments at this time.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the minutes have been approved. I would like to, before we go on to the next item on our agenda, I'd like to go to the item that we just added. In order to have sort of a conversation about about communication, and I'm going to go through some, I guess, some examples of from 2024 where I feel like the OTAC's priorities have kind of been sidelined and or just haven't moved forward, and how we can best address that for the future. Our rules were approved by the LSBME, our rules changes, on April 24th. And since then, they have really not made it out of the walls of Camp Street to the Louisiana Department of Health for budgetary consideration and for the open comment period. The OTAC considers this to be a very high priority issue. We now have dozens of OTs who are awaiting clarification on being able to use dry needling and the countless other updates that we made, but 6.5 months later, we haven't moved to the next step. And when I try to get information about this, I generally don't receive a response. The advisory opinion for the best practices for the utilization of telehealth was approved by OTAC in the August meeting, as we just reviewed. And I made the grammatical changes and sent that to LSBME on September 17th for publication. I never received a response. I sent it again on October 1st. Still never received a response. It still has not been published. Again, OTAC would consider this a high priority. We had received emails from practitioners that indicated to us that there are OTs and OT assistants out there who are not practicing telehealth in the spirit of the law and not ensuring that it's a decline in the quality of care compared to an in-person visit. So we feel strongly about the fact that we spent time creating this and approving it. If there is an issue from LSBME on publishing it, I have not been told what that is. If there's not an issue, I'm not sure why it hasn't been published, but essentially it hasn't been, despite being sent over 2 months ago. At our OTAC meeting on February 23rd, we had a discussion surrounding the OTA to MOT bridge applicants and waiving their background check if they were still in good standing as a COTA. Patricia Swilton suggested that an attestation could be added to the application in order to prevent the person who's been in good standing with this board for however long from having to get another background check. This was supposed to be added to an LSBME board meeting. It apparently was not. When I tried to follow up on it and set up a meeting, it felt like it was very difficult to do. I realized this meeting did get happen yesterday, and I appreciate that, but it kind of felt like an act of Congress to get that together, and it was very short notice. But I do look forward to hearing the results of that meeting. Also at our February meeting, Kelly Brandon brought up several issues related to discrepancies between what was on the website concerning requirements for initial licensure versus what the actual requirements for initial licensure are. It was Kelly Brandon who had done the deep dive and was the expert on that. Following that meeting, we had agreed that there was going to be a meeting set up between Kelly, Dr. Van, and Tracy Morrow. And this never happened in my attempts at facilitating that. Again, I felt like I couldn't make it happen despite my best efforts. And I wound up in an email chain trying to talk about stuff. I wound up not even knowing what I was talking about because I wasn't the expert, and I really was just trying to facilitate a meeting, and it just never did happen. When grammatical issues were discovered at our August OTAC meeting with the telehealth advisory opinion, we had to vote just to allow me to make the changes and then have it published, just for that simple thing. And yet, in the past week, a 40-year precedence of temporary permitting for OT practitioners was basically eliminated and put into practice in about 10 minutes, apparently without a discussion, let alone a vote by OTAC. So when I put all this together, it feels like OTAC's priorities are sidelined or delayed, and priorities of the board are capable of being handled without even our input. and put into practice immediately. And it just feels like I'm not sure what our purpose is as an advisory commission. If our priorities are continuously sidelined, I don't get responses, it drags on, whereas our priority of the board can be put into practice without even talking to us about it. This relationship is extremely important. So I would like us to sort of move on to potential ways that this can be improved. If I need to be including somebody else in my email communications rather than who I generally have been, I need to know that. If maybe we could set up a standing meeting between myself and Dr. Van about a week after each OTAC meeting, so that we can review what are the action items that just happened at the OTAC meeting the week before. What needs to be followed up? What do I need to do? What does he need to do? What does Patricia need to do, or anybody else, Tracy or anyone else? Maybe a standing meeting with Patricia or whoever is currently working on our rules, since it sounds as if Patricia is out. I don't know if that has been turned over to somebody else. I hope it has been. We'll find out later in this meeting, but I did feel like we need to address this issue, the communication issue, and how we can improve this going forward. So I invite any comments or any ideas from Dr. Van, Jacinta, or anybody else on this meeting.
Well, let me start out with regard to the telehealth issue. You gave us guidelines. There is only a law. There are no rules. And we have finished the first draft of the rules. It is being put in APA format as we speak, and that will be sent on up its way once we finish it, based upon your guidelines. We'll go ahead and get the rules. We really can't publish the guidelines till the rules are in place, but we could, if you want to go backwards, that's fine. But the reason why we want the rules to reflect your guidelines is that only thing that is in place to regulate it is the law. And even though the guidelines are guidelines, we really want to make the rules reflect what your guidelines want to be. And that way we can have the guidelines, the rules, and the law, and there'll be no doubt about what's going on. But if we only publish the guidelines, the rules still supersede. But I mean, excuse me, the law, I apologize, the law still supersedes. So that's why I had personally chosen to get the rules done. And we're in the process of, we've put together all of the points that we needed it to be. And basically, so you'll know, it's going to be a standardized addition to every one of the licensed classes that do telehealth outside of the physicians, and everybody will have a similar set of rules. We appreciate the guidelines you made, because they do reflect, and they're going to be all in one, so that every one of the rules will be amended to reflect the same kind of guidelines that you suggested. So that is actually very close to being completed, and the rule will take off. With regard to the law, with regard to the OTAC overall overhaul of the rules, there have been some problems at the state capitol, okay? They have lost people, changed people, and a lot of our stuff got displaced. But I assure you that it is in the hands of the state capitol, and we're waiting for the FEIS report to come out. We have the notice of intent ready to roll as soon as the FEIS is ready. We have to get that's the fiscal and economic impact statement, and we should be getting that back in the next 48 to 72 hours. I called yesterday, fussed them, and they apologized, but they've had a number of changes of personnel. And so we kind of let the ball drop in that regard. I should have been yelling at them more, calling them, and I apologize for not doing that to y'all's satisfaction. With regard to the issues that Ms. Kelly has talked about, I think we've addressed all of those changes on the webpage after our meeting yesterday. I think we've addressed those concerns. And the board made the decision, and we talked about this earlier, about doing away with the temporary permits. And I made it clear, and I made a mistake in implementing it for your class. I have to change the law. And just so you'll know, that section 3009E of the law, 3009E, it says the board shall issue a temporary license, and all we're going to change that to is may. The goal here is that we want everybody who's treating our patients to have have their certificate. They want to be fully trained. We will always keep this in the law and the rules because we want it to be, it may, a discretionary ability to do it in case of urgent healthcare needs for the state, whether that be another Katrina, another situation of the, another epidemic, whether it's COVID or anything else. And also the vast possibilities that there's just a unique shortage in any one of our fields of licensing. So that is where we are on that, and I apologize. I've stopped that. We've called the people that got the no's, and we will be implementing this beginning of the year for everybody but OTAC, and OTAC will be phased in after the session when we hope to change that board shall to board may. But the board made that decision long ago, and we talked about it, and when we had our last meeting, y'all kind of wanted to defer it, but I still have to keep things moving along, and it was my mistake, and I apologize for it. And then the issue of better communication, I can do one of two things. I can happily set up something called Agenda OTAC at LSBME if you want me to, and anything that any of you OTAC members want to add to the agenda, you send it there, and Amy and I and Mr. Cinta will get that, and I will get a special copy every time it comes, so I'll know what you want to add to the agenda, okay? I don't always see all of those emails that you talk with Miss Patricia about, so I can't address what I don't know about, but I know where we are on your rules, and we know where we are on the update for the telehealth rules, and I think I've addressed that. And then, as far as what we'd like you to do, and you sent us some dates on the meetings, I think sometimes we do get between meetings a long time, and I'm happy to set up a post-meeting session to address all of your concerns. It doesn't bother me. But again, I think understand that some of these things we try to do, but we are at the mercy of the legislature when they're in session, when they're not in session, when they change. And again, I think it was a personnel change that kind of got lost in the way, but I know they are working on the FEIS right now. And as soon as they grant us the FEIS, we will send a notice of publication. Then that'll set up the opportunity for a hearing if anybody wants one. And I think it'll go much quicker after that. But again, I have no control over them. All I can do is call and fuss. And I probably should have fussed them more than I did, and I apologize. Is there any other issue that you want to address, Ms. Ingrid?
Well, currently, the OTAC members know to email. I consider myself as being the one that sets the agenda for the meetings. And the OTAC members know to email me if they want to add something to the agenda. And then I communicate the agenda items now with Amy, previously with Olivia. As far as the advisory opinion on telehealth, just a common courtesy of letting me know that you were not going to publish the advisory opinion, even though we had voted to publish it, because you want to wait until the rules change, would be really appreciated.
I apologize.
I don't know, I'm sending emails and it's crickets. I get nothing back. And just a quick email back saying, we've rethought this out and this advisory opinion is great, but because it's not fully supported by the rules yet, we feel like the changes should be published first. I mean, I understand that, but at the same time, it feels like we're being ignored, something that we thought was important, worked on, voted on. When I don't hear back, when my emails are literally unanswered, I don't know that's what y'all are thinking and planning. And then as far as the rules, again, I can't tell you how many emails I've sent asking for what's the latest. I mean, I had no idea it even moved to the level of the state. That anybody from the Department of Health had this. That's great.
It's not the Department, please for correction, it is not the Department of Health.
Okay,
They don't take care of that. It is the legislature that does the fiscal and economic impact. It is the register that publishes the documents.
okay,
We have to have a request for a hearing if we're going to have one. If not, we do it without a hearing. Some people send written comments. We deal with that. Then the board sends, once that period is expired, which is like 35 days total, we have to send it to the Attorney General. Then once we get it back from the Attorney General, it goes back for final publication. So
Okay.
we have to get the legislature involved because of the requirement in the APA for the fiscal and economic impact. And
All right.
again, we don't have a lot of control over that.
No, but I didn't even know that Patricia, or maybe it's somebody else, had finished getting it ready and sent it to the legislature. I thought it was still being edited, revised. So, I mean, this is great news, but again, just a quick email back saying that Patricia's done and it's moved on. Would be, excellent. So that we're not in the dark or just a response. But yes, I would like us to maybe have a meeting between you, myself and you about a week after each OTAC meeting, so that we can look at what are the action items, what did we talk about, what needs following up. Maybe it's nothing. That's awesome too. But I would appreciate if we could kind of have a phone meeting about a week later.
It'll be set up automatically.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment about this agenda item of communication?
None at this time.
We are moving on to our next agenda item, which we've probably discussed to a degree, which was an update on the rule revisions. So anything else to add about the where the rule revisions are, Dr. Van, or?
The rule revision is complete. It is in APA format. It has to first get the fiscal and economic impact statement approved by the legislature. That's where it is resting right now. And quite frankly, I think it got lost in the shuffle of personnel. But again, it's there waiting right now. They assure me they are working on it, but again, we haven't gotten it back yet.
Great, okay. Does anybody else have any other questions about that?
Where does it go after that?
When they send their approval, it goes to the registry for the first notice of intent. At that point, we have to wait about 35 days. 20 days from the notice is when the people have to request. If there's no request for a hearing after 20 days, we can probably go ahead and start the process of sending it on to the Attorney General. If there is a request for a hearing, we have to get it within 35 days of the day of the notice. So we have the hearing promptly if there's a request. If there's no request, we don't have to have a hearing and we can move on. Then it goes to the Attorney General for antitrust and clearance of anything else if they feel it's a problem. If they have no problems with it, it moves right on up the way to a secondary notice. And at that point, once the secondary notice is in, it's called the final notice of intent. Then if somebody in your community or somebody else in the state doesn't like that, they can ask the legislature to do a fiscal or a review of that by our oversight committee based upon the rules that allow that oversight, and they can request either from the Senate or the House to do that. If they have asked for that, that takes 35 days from when they ask for it. And if they don't want to, if after the hearing they make changes, we have to adjust those changes, send that back to the Attorney General. If there are no changes, it then goes on to final approval by the governor, and then it's in fact acted upon. It's done.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on this item?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, but we have somebody trying to enter the meeting, but their handle is not labeled. So I'm gonna go ahead and let them in and then we can verify who it is.
Okay. Um,
Let's wait till we see who this is.
Can you verify who is NOL-MPIMX2920059 that just entered the meeting?
It's Mary. I'm on my cell phone. I'm in the airport.
Okay.
Hey, Mary. Thanks for joining.
Go ahead and label her Mary for the future, so when we look at the recording, we'll know who that was.
I am.
That's just thank you. All right.
All right, our next agenda item, I think we have frankly already addressed the update on the advisory opinion on best practices of telehealth. If I will summarize my understanding, Dr. Van, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that at this point, the board does not want to publish the advisory opinion that we created because you would rather wait until actually, our updated rules don't even include any guidelines about telehealth now that I think about it. So what are you saying that we're waiting for on this?
We have to put rules for telehealth, okay? Because until the rules, the only thing that applies is the law. In the absence of a rule, the law is the guidance, okay? So to put this in without the rules to support it, and you had made great points, and we're actually have decided to utilize that for just almost all of your points for everybody else. But then it'll be a similar section for everyone, and we're going to be updating all of those rules. But again, once we get the rules written, then you can have an advisory opinion that clarifies what the rules are, something might say. But an advisory opinion, I've been told, and I'll redo it with Ms. Wilton when she gets back. If she thinks we can publish it without the rules being in place, I will. But again, I don't think we can, because I was told only the law is what we have to follow at this time.
So the board is creating standardized rules for all of the licensed entities. And at what point will we be able to take a look at those?
They are based upon your guidelines. I didn't think you'd even have a concern about it.
Well, okay. I mean, yeah, if they are based on, we probably would agree with it.
But
when
yeah,
are you
again,
participating?
I'm happy to bring it back. Again, I'm happy to bring it back at the next meeting. That doesn't bother me.
Okay. Yeah, if they've been drafted, I'm sure we would appreciate seeing them.
Well, we're not going to even wait. I mean, if we can get them rolling, we need to get them rolling, okay? But if you want to wait till the next meeting, we'll do everybody else but you. I mean, the goal here is to get it rolling.
Okay, so the rules regarding use of telehealth have already been drafted and approved by LSBME.
No,
and
they're not been approved. I anticipate that they'll be approving them at the December meeting.
Okay.
We have to put it in APA format and all of those things. And so we'll get that.
When is the December LSBME meeting? Because we have an OTAC meeting on the 13th.
Our meeting is on the 15th.
Okay, so
Or the 16th.
the 16th. Okay.
The 16th is a Monday. I apologize. I always have to look. I apologize.
I mean, keep us on the LSBME agenda, but I would appreciate if we could just take a look at them at our meeting on the 13th.
Again, understand you're welcome to look at them, but by the time you see it on the 13th, it will be on the agenda, and it would have to be changed at the meeting.
Yes, keep us on the agenda for LSBME, but if you could share them with us on the 13th.
Okay. Actually, I can send them to you earlier, and y'all can look at them, and you can respond directly to me if you choose.
Great, that'd be awesome.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mary, we can't understand you. Miss Mary?
Yes.
We couldn't understand what you were saying, ma'am.
I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. All right. Okay.
Maybe
So
some background.
I want to make one comment on the background checks, okay? It is policy here at the board for any change in license that has occurred beyond a year from the last criminal background check, that we do another, okay? And that's not an attestation. That is something that has to be done with criminal background checks for licensure by the state. And so the board's policy is if a PA gets a PA degree, and then they want to go to med school or get an MD degree and become a doctor, if it's been over a year, they have to do this, okay? If a RT decides to become a polysome, that polysome, if that is with over a year, they'd have to get the criminal background check. So the transition, if the transition is occurring within a year of the previous criminal background check, it will not be a problem. But if it's over a year, we will probably have to do it again. And that's what our policy is. So I don't know, when we said waiver, I thought that was for the issue of the attestation. We are not requiring notarization of the attestations anymore. All of that has changed to where they have to sign, just verify that they're giving us truthful information. But in terms of the criminal background check, that's something that's mandated by law.
Okay. That differs, I guess, from what we were talking about in February, but it's clarified now. Does anybody have any comments about that?
No, I'll just pass that information along. Thank you.
And every licensee will be getting an email in the next 48 to 72 working days that tells them that we are phasing out temporary licenses over the next year. And again, yours will not even begin, and that was my mistake. And again, I apologize for any distress to any of the licensees that felt that. But once we change that section 3009E to the board may, then we will not address your license class, but we'll handle the other ones, because it's at the board discretion for all of the rest of them.
So when and how do you change that part of the law?
It has to go through, it has to be a bill that's introduced at the session.
So I was always told, and I really don't understand, but changing the law is really difficult, or parts of the law, because it's very outdated. So does that mean if you open it up, then we can also address other things about the law that are incorrect?
Well, we are working very closely with LDH in matters of legal changes to their board licensing issue, because they've taken a great interest in the licensing. And so we're working very closely with them. I think that if there's something you want to change in the law, I'm going to need it before the 25th of this month. This is the first time I've heard that you want to change something in the law, but I would need a detail for the 25th of this month.
I just didn't know if it was ever even a possibility, but there are a lot of inconsistencies in it, so.
Well, Ms. Kelly, if you want to send me a quick analysis, I'll be happy to address. We are having a large meeting with LDH to address these concerns, what they're going to support us to change, and all of the other law changes that need to be made. And so I'm happy to address it then. If they say no, it won't be done. If they say yes, it will be done. And I think the good news is when LDH and this administration support something, it's more likely to get done than ever right now. And that's why we're doing it this way to get what we need done. You know, if you want to lay it, again, it's going to be a problem if LDH says no, because I can't do whatever they tell it. If they say no, we're not going to be able to do it. Just like if they say no, we can't increase fees, we won't. But if they say we will and they support it, we will.
Dr. Van, I'd like to just back up a little bit and I guess bring everybody in OTAC up to speed about this whole temp permitting thing. So I think everybody has understood that, because Dr. Van has brought up in the past his concerns with temporary permitting. He has explained to us that LSBME is a complaints-driven entity, so that if a person is operating with a temporary permit as an OT or as an OTA, when that temporary permit expires, it's not like anybody at LSBME is tracking them down and finding out, are they still working somewhere? Are they working without having renewed their temporary permit or without applying for a permanent license? And so it relies on the community to realize that somebody is practicing without a license and to inform the board. That happened recently. 2 OTs contacted the board about the same OTA. And Dr. Van then communicated with me about that situation and about his desire to change the wording in our law, which currently says that we shall allow temporary permitting. And he would like to have changed that to saying that for OT practitioners in the law, we may allow temporary permitting. And that would in essence mean that temporary permitting would be only for emergency situations like COVID, when we have to quickly license people, or some sort of natural disaster and we need to have a lot of OTs come into the state quickly and we need to get them licensed quickly. We might allow temporary permitting in cases like that. But that in essence, changing the law from that we shall allow temporary permitting to we may allow temporary permitting would mean that for the average new graduate OT or OTA, they would not be able to apply for a temporary permit. They would have to wait till they had passed their exam. And NBCOT would handle all of the transcript, all the, you know, what do you call it when you make sure the transcripts are legit. And then we would use NBCOTs in order to permanently license only. Did I summarize that correctly, Dr. Van?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I would appreciate if we had at least the opportunity to discuss the pros and cons of this and what our perspective is as OTs on this. Does anybody have from OTAC have opinion one way or the other about basically removing temp permitting for the average OTA graduate?
I mainly expressed mine yesterday just with the gap between being able to, you know, take the exam and then getting to work. I know most of our graduates are really eager to get out there and get to work. And we don't have a huge gap by the time from when they finish their requirements for graduation and when they graduate, but some of them do, either whether they're trying to get enough money to register for the exam through working, or just studying, you know, because they do recommend that you study at least 6 months. And so when they're on field work, they might not be able to put the time into it. So they might not even register for the exam until a few months later. And so that's just delaying when they can get to work. So that is a concern. And then of course, if they don't pass the first time and then having to retake again, they still have to wait that 30 days to take it again. So, I mean, that is a concern because our students, they are pursuing this so they can get to work as soon as possible. So I understand the pros of not doing it, you know, but that is a concern for me.
I would say for the LSU New Orleans students, it's probably not as big as a concern. I have a really small minority of students who get a temporary license, usually only 2 or 3 at the most. The vast majority want to just wait until they've passed the board exam. We also have a 1 month gap between when they finish the requirements and when they actually graduate. And they usually use that 1 month to start studying and take the exam. And by the time they graduate, a lot of them have already taken the test or are just about to. So I don't feel like for the OT students in New Orleans, it's as big a concern. How about you, Carolyn?
I don't think it's a huge concern for us, for the OT students, just because of the fact that as soon as they finish field work and they graduate close to that time and can take the test. So it's not a huge issue for us. I don't know about our OTA program. They just recently switched over to a bachelor's degree, and so I'm not sure like where everything's going to flow in terms of finishing their semesters, and I don't know, so I can't really speak to that today. But I think it was just the fact that it kind of took them off guard because they had planned on getting that, and some of them already had jobs lined up, and anyway, it was just I guess a surprise. It's
And
been the
again,
best way to put it.
Ms. Carolyn, I apologize for that. My staff has been instructed to call all of those people that were denied and issue them their temporary license in accordance with the current law and rules.
Thank you.
And my only other concern is, and I know that the law supersedes the rules, but that we have in the rules, the rules almost sound like, yeah, you can just apply for it. And so I anticipate that being very confusing to people unless I'm assuming though that you'll say something explicit on the website or whatever information that you send saying this does not apply to you.
Okay, here's the problem, okay? Unless they have an application in, we don't even know they exist.
No, I get the problem. I just didn't know,
We can send it out to the OT community, and they can pass it on to the students. If you would like, and we are happy to do this, we've done it with the medical schools. If all of the programs have coordinators, and you all will give us the detailed list of emails of those coordinators, we can appraise them of changes and issues relative to licensing, like we do all of the medical school coordinators.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
How do I do that?
Well, let's start by sending the email, the name, and the phone number so we can verify to me for the establishment of a coordinator list. Because those are the people that are going to be really telling. We don't know an applicant even exists as a person until they open up a portal and put in an application. And quite frankly, we don't even start processing the application until they pay the fees.
Right.
So who do we email it to, Dr. Van?
Me, vcolada@lsbme.la.gov.
Okay.
And just put on it the subject coordinator list edition.
And again, I wouldn't expect y'all to know who these people are yet, or coordinate anything with them until you had this list. But it's just the fact that the rules that we just did have that in there, and it doesn't say. The rules just sound like you can get it.
Let me say this to you.
I know.
No. There is a way to do this. Okay. And once I get the FEIS and it starts moving along, okay. After the comment period, during the comment period, I would ask Kelly, send me a concern about it. Then we have the opportunity to change it before we send it to the Attorney General. So we can tweak the rules during the process because the comments periods exist to tweak the rules that are in process. And Ms. Kim has her hand up if you want to recognize Ms. Kim.
Yes, Kim.
I guess, I do understand the rationale behind not doing the temporary permits. However, once they have passed the exam and applied, I just hope that we can streamline and not make that process months and months for some of these students who are ready to start working. They've committed to a job and things like that. Because I've had students in the past, and it's just, who knows when you're going to get your license.
Well, and again, I can show you, we are averaging right now 40 days. We have some outliers, and every one of those outliers has had a phone call and multiple emails to tell them what they're missing.
Okay.
And I can't, we are actually in the process of overhauling all of the initial applications so that we won't chase documents. They'll put them in the initial application. And if they're not there, then we don't care how long it takes. But if everything is loaded up, we're committed to we're trying to get our licensing time to under 20 days from the time the completed application is paid for when we go to this front loading event. The only thing that they will have to do when they with this front loaded event, or process, I should say, is they have to go and get their fingerprinting, okay? And that's going to be something that we no longer get involved in. It's all been revamped by the state police in the new system. And Mr. Loma tells me that many times we get it in 2 working days, but we always get it within 5 to 7 working days. So the criminal background check is gone as a delay. Now, if the criminal background check is positive, then that's a whole different problem. And
Sure.
we had 3 of those in the last analysis last week, and I've cleared all of those criminal background checks. So even those licensees can proceed on. And so I can tell you that while our average, I did not do a bell curve, but I'll run a bell curve and send it all to y'all in a few later on today. And you can look at where we are. And I can tell you, we've made phone calls to everybody who is above the average.
Glenn had his hand up.
I don't really know how it fits into the conversation, but a temporary, like I needed a temporary license to be able to go to work and support my family as soon as I was done with OT school. So I think the difference, I think having the temporary license as an option. Now, if it goes away, except for basically what it sounds like, kind of like an emergency circumstance, but if the normalcy of it and the availability of it kind of just goes away, for lack of a better word, I feel like what we're doing is we're catering to a very specific, we're catering to a full-time student population, not a working person's population. Which I mean, if that's the ultimate decision and choice, okay. I mean, you'll just have to, I guess, just deal with it and move on. But I think that's why, and I think that's kind of the discrepancy between maybe I might just be generalizing here, but like the OTA versus the OT route is that I feel like a lot of people who are maybe in the OT situation, like they are maybe not, but like the people that I've kind of interacted with is like the OTs typically tend to be like a younger demographic that's coming straight out of college, straight into school. I was unique. Like I had a 5-year gap. I was married and had 1 kid and 1 on the way. And I was the minority in my class. And I think that still is the minority. I think if you switch over to OTAs, I think the more OTAs that I've seen, maybe it might be different, but at the time it was more people who are older, people who had kids, had a family, and were working already. Not that OTs aren't, but in general, I think if you take away the temporary license, like the ability to work before you finish your test, before you have all of those other things official and in place, it's going to have a trickle down effect that I don't really feel like we'll be able to necessarily understand maybe the implication of it. But there's a lot of people that, part of their field work is like at the end of their field work, they get hired. They get hired by where they go and do their field work, and they look forward to like onboarding them very shortly after. And we would delay all of that until they're done with their test. Now, you could accelerate the taking of your test, but then again, like other points that have been brought up, if you fail that test, then now there's a whole lot more. There's just like a whole lot more wrapped up into all of this than maybe we could all necessarily quantify or predict. And so me personally, I'm not a fan of just eliminating the temporary license or making it as like a PRN, like emergency kind of basis type thing. I don't know if this is like, if that's what this discussion is, but I just felt like maybe I just put that opinion out there, I guess.
That is what this discussion is. I would like us to get all.
Okay.
There's also, and just as a counterpoint, a little bit to that, Glenn, is that it is harder to pass the exam if you're already working. It's sort of a contrary thing where students who need to start working financially start working, but it also means they have less time to study for the test and are sometimes the repeat test takers, which also costs money.
Yeah, I
Um,
just feel like this attitude, it's very not, it's just very not, um, it doesn't take into account the people who aren't your typical student. I guess that's, and okay, we can't cater to everybody, but to me, it alienates the person who has a family. It alienates the person who is a working person who's maybe working and trying to put themselves through school at the same time. Like it makes it very difficult, I think, for me, who can't just live as a full-time student until it's time to go to work. Like that just perpetuates, like, I mean, this, I don't know, kind of like, let me take out a whole bunch of money and go to grad school and then just live off all of this. Or I don't know. There's a lot of double talk. I felt like in school, it was like, you can't be in this. I was told you can't be in this OT program and have a full-time job. Like that was communicated top down from our department head and teachers. Now, that might be different now. I've been out of school for a while, but I mean, what are you, how do you expect people to live and be out there when they're done with school, but then they can't go to work? So they're just supposed to sit around and study all day because it's still kind of like a continuation of school in a sense, you know, by being trapped in this limbo period of, well, I have to study for this test to pass this test before to get my license before I can go to work. Yes, I'm done with school, but like nobody recognizes me as a professional yet. Like I I don't know. I don't like it.
well, I'm just also gonna, anyone can say anything. I also just want to remind us of our mission, which is to protect the public. So what is the best practice in terms of protecting the public? Personally, I do feel like the current system, meaning that LSBME is complaints driven only, is kind of a setup for people getting a temp license, getting that job, and then the people from that job, the HR people or whatever, just never following back up. They see that temp license when they first hire them, and then when they should check back up 3 months later, they don't, and the person stays unlicensed and continues to practice. And I do feel like our current system is one where that it could happen, and we might not even know it is happening until somebody complains about it.
Well, I do understand the difference between someone who has taken the test and passed and someone who hasn't yet. But I mean, the same thing really can happen with renewals when they're not checking if they're licensed or not. But I mean, I know that they've at least initially passed the exam. But there used to be a time where for a temp permit that they had to show their supervisor's information, you know, because it really is only for the people who have a job. So, you know, if they had that and there was, I mean, I know that would be really difficult, but some kind of system in place where the supervisor was part of that process to get that license or to get that permit. But I know that would take a great deal to do, but it's just an option in that may column because we do have the non-traditional student as well, Glenn. So I agree with you.
And on to
I-
that point, as far as what Glenn's saying, my initial reaction when I was like, oh, this is a bad idea, especially because so many of these programs are going to OTD. That's an additional financial obligation that a lot of these students are taking on. And also, is it going to be a deterrent for a student who says, well, I could do OT, who would be an incredible OT. However, I can't go to work for X number of months because I can't get a temp license. You know, are we losing out on some potential good therapist? It's just, I'm not a big
I
fan of it.
believe that the graduate is able to be a good therapist. We have to ask ourselves a very straightforward question. Do we need a license at all? What is the standard that we are trying to impart by granting a license? And look, I'm happy to work with LDH to get rid of the license if that's what you think. But if the license is supposed to mean something, then we really have to say, you gotta, if the standard is, if you don't want to have the standard as NBCOT certification, we can say, okay, don't even have it. Just graduate from school and we'll grant the license that way. But if the standard is you want a national test that says you have the skill, then, and you know, I think that's what we have to say. But again, if y'all want to change it to where you say, hey, we don't even need the NPCRT, just graduate, show us your transcript, send us your diploma, and we give you a license. Or even, do we even need a license? Let the employers look at the transcript and let the employers look at the diploma. I mean, I think that we are trying to address a problem that really is an educational problem in terms of how they start school, finish school, their ability to take the test is, and I'm told by NBCOT, they can take the test numerous times, okay? And actually, Kelly explained to me yesterday that they can take the test before they even graduate, and as soon as they graduate, the NBCOT will release the scores. And so the minute they graduate, they're done, and we got the NBCOT certification. But if the NBCOT certification is not necessary to work, then let's eliminate that.
I think,
What is, oh, sorry.
just when, you know, when the temp licensing was put into place, whenever we started getting licensed, probably 40 years ago, obviously it was a written exam and could take up to 6 months to get your results. And that's just not the reality anymore. Everything that Dr. Van just said is correct. They can sign up for the exam before even finishing school, and take it and be ready to go. And they can retake it as many times as they like to be licensed as a PT in this state. If you fail it 3 times, you're not allowed to take that test again, period, nationally. And about half of states now have eliminated temp licensing for OTs also. So that doesn't mean that we're like the last state standing allowing temp permitting, but about half have eliminated it. And probably because of the speed with which students can get their results and take the test. It just doesn't, the impetus for allowing a temp permit is just not there like it needed to be 30 and 20 years ago.
Forgive my ignorance, but what is this? What is the, how does it work with medical students? As soon as you graduate medical school, you're like, is it the same kind of thing? Like you graduate medical school, you have to pass a board, then you apply for a license and get your license, then you can do it. Like what is it?
Okay, over the years it's changed. I will tell you that when an old fart like me in 1974 graduated, he had to pass the flex and he could get a license. Now the rule is you have to pass step 1 and step 2, get accepted into a residency program, and have at least 1 year of postgraduate training before you get an unrestricted license. We prefer 2. And so what we say is that they have to have 1 year postgraduate training, be accepted into the same program, have the permission of the residency coordinator to get the unrestricted license. But at this point in time, it's basically 2 years unless that catch-all for the people that need to get licensed to earn some money. But nobody practices without a license. We even license the trainees. Because if if a trainee gets in trouble, we just had a trainee get in trouble at Oxford about a year ago. We had to pull his training permit. He can't even train now. Okay. But again, no, you graduation from medical school, you can't even get a license with that.
Is there a test you have to pass?
You have to pass 3 tests, quite frankly. At the end of the first year, you have to pass step 1. At the end of the second year, at the end of the 4th year, you have to pass step 2. And sometime before you start the 3rd year of postgraduate training, you have to pass step 3.
Does at this point, Dr. Van, you've heard us out. We have a mix of feelings, I think, from OTAC about it. Is this a done deal and we just had this discussion in order to sort of inform you? Or is this something that we vote on as a OTAC to recommend to the board either to maintain temp permitting or that we recommend that it be in place only in cases of emergencies?
I think you all can make any recommendation you want. Make a motion, I'll bring it to the board. The board will do whatever it likes to do, okay?
Okay.
I can tell you that they are, for the reasons we alluded to, they are unalterably opposed to temporary permits. It's an outdated modality. It's going away in all of the other licensing classes. And again, I mean, if you think OTACs are fine to, after they finish their coursework, to go to work without a NBCOT certification, let's do away with that. You know, if that's not important, then let's not make it a requirement. And the reason we chose to go that way is that we don't have to chase paper. We can get it much easier than waiting for a transcript from the dean or waiting from a copy of the diploma and looking into the school that they trained in. This way, the people can come from out of state if they have their NBCOT certification. It's going to be much easier to bring newer people in. But again, again, I can tell you that the board is not happy with the problems of the temporary licensing. You're going to see one later on today in our executive session. But I think the issue for you all is if you really think that these people are safe to practice without NBCOT certification, then let's just do away with that.
I don't think any of us are saying that. So I'm not going to phrase the vote like that.
Well, again, I hear you say, well, they need money, they need to go to work. They're going to be taking care of patients. They're going to be taking care of my family and your family. Do you want, look, I'm very picky about my doctors. I like them to be board certified. If I go to anesthesia, I don't want just anybody monitoring my anesthesia. I want a CRNA or an MD. But again, y'all may have a different perspective about it. I think we want to hear your perspective and I'll present it to the board. I can't guarantee you they're going to agree with you, but I'm happy to present whatever you want to present to the board.
Okay. And I might lose this vote. I'm but because I've already kind of expressed how I feel about it. But I would like to go ahead and just make a vote. So vote if you are the vote is to change the wording in our law from occupational therapy board shall allow temporary permitting, to change it to that we may allow temporary permitting in time with understanding that the times in which we would allow it would be issues of pandemics or emergencies that would require quick licensing of therapists. So if you are in favor of changing the law from shall to may temporary permit, please raise, I think I'm going to have raised hand because I won't be able to tell who's aye. And then I'll separately say, find out who's opposed. So please raise your hand.
Can I just say that after Dr. Van, after listening to your point about like medical school and how all that works, I see how I see why the board takes the stance that it does toward temporary licenses. I can understand that it doesn't favor the working person in that way, but in that sense, it's like, well, you need to set a standard. And so if this is about setting a standard, like setting a standard, well, then it would be, I can understand now that the standard would be pass MBCOT, obtain your license, then go practice, because that's the standard. That's the standard that's set in the medical community. So I guess if we're gonna follow suit, then I could see how that would be a necessary standard to set. So, sorry, Ingrid, I know that you're about to place a vote, but I didn't want to feel like I'm like flip-flopping or whatever. But I guess if that's the standard, then I support that standard, I guess is what I'm getting at. It's unfortunate because it affects the people who are trying to get to work quickly before they have passed their boards. It's different to me. I guess I feel like OTs are different in doctors in that way, because I feel like doctors start. Am I misunderstanding the situation where doctors can start getting paid before they obtain their license, or no, they don't?
All right, just so you'll know, I'll give you a perfect example of what has happened in the last 8 months in this country. We have many people who come from outside of the country to get residencies and residency training programs as physicians. We had 3 students that took the test in an abnormal circumstance where the testing center came under suspicion for cheating. The USMLE, the United States Medical License Exam, invalidated their step 2 scores, which means they could not train. So they literally had to stop training until they could retake the test. So yes, if you don't pass step 1 and step 2, you can't even get a residency to get a permit to train. So again, you can earn money lots of other ways, but you can't earn money practicing medicine or training to practice medicine unless you pass the first 2 tests. And as I said earlier, if you don't pass the 3rd test, step 3, you don't get to go past the 3rd year of residency. You're done.
Gotcha. Okay.
So again, that we take all these steps to protect the public. But again, I am perfectly, and
Right.
I'll tell you why I chose that as the standard and why the board agreed with me. The NBCOT is going to eliminate the time it takes for me to get transcripts and copies of and verifying schools and diplomas and all that. That goes away. Okay. We need your NBCOT scores. But again, I think there's a deeper feeling here that I sense, and I want to recognize it. Look, maybe you feel that all you need to do is complete the training and you don't need a standard. And why don't we can do away with the standard? I mean, that's fine with me. But I think we want to have some national standard that we can say Louisiana has a national standard for the people that treat our patients and our citizens. And that's what we are trying to establish. But again, and I'll be honest with you, there's a big move afoot in the legislature, and I think you could get the legislature to agree with you all. We don't need a license for OTs at a period. They can just work as soon as they graduate or whatever. And I think the legislature would agree with you.
That's not at all what we're saying. We're just advocating for our students who rely on that. I mean, that's it. It's not taking away the standard, and then they all get a permanent license afterward anyway. So it's never been a situation.
No, they don't. We'll talk about it later.
Well,
but no,
I'm talking about that. I'm just.
All is an inclusive word.
I'm talking about ours personally, but and I know that Delgado had the same concern because of their students who rely on that. But so it's not that we want to take away the standard by any means.
Okay, I was going to say that we would vote by hand raising, but I personally can't figure out how to raise my hand on this.
How about we call a roll for you?
Yeah, I think I'll do it like that. Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, it
all
has to
right,
be a
I'll
voice vote.
Excuse
You'll
me?
do a voice vote, but I'll call your roll and we'll call your name and you give us the vote.
Mhm.
All right. Whenever you want to get the motion moved and seconded, and then we'll have the
Yes.
public comment, and then we'll have the roll call vote.
Okay, I'm gonna put a motion forth to allow a vote on whether the there should be a change in the law from shall provide allow temporary permitting to may provide allow temporary permitting. Does anybody second the motion for a vote?
I second, Carolyn.
Any public comment?
No public comment at this time by the email.
All in favor of
Then
moving
we're gonna do
forward?
a
with the
roll
vote?
call vote, Ms. Ingrid. I was gonna read the names.
Oh, yeah, I was just, at this point, I was just doing the I in terms of actually getting a vote, doing a vote.
No, you've got a motion and a second.
That's
If
good
there's
enough.
no more discussion, then you take the vote by roll call.
Got it. All right, go ahead, Dr. Van.
All right. Ms. Raylina,
I'm in favor of the change.
I'm sorry, yes or no, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Solari,
Yes, I'm in favor of the change.
Ms. Murphy,
I'm in favor.
Ms. Ingrid,
I'm in favor. Yes.
Ms. Kelly? Ms. Kelly
Yes.
and Mr. Glenn.
Yes.
Okay, so we will
And
proceed.
Amy's here as well. I joined in late. I
I'm
say yes
sorry.
as well.
I apologize. I did not see you on the list, Amy. Thank you.
That's okay. I joined late.
What about Mary? Did she leave the meeting?
She
Mary?
did.
She left.
Okay.
Yes, she did a border flight.
All right, so Amy, you voted yes to be sure?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. You have 100% yays.
Okay. Thank you for this good discussion. I am just going to move on to the last item on our agenda before the executive session, and that had to do with clarification of client evaluation without referral. This got brought up by occupational therapist Darby Philibert, and I'm gonna share the screen. Well, actually, let's see if I can't remember if it made it onto here or not, the piece of paper I need. Oh, it did. Okay, yay. So this is our current practice act. And what it says is that the OT may enter a case for the purposes of providing consultation, indirect services, and evaluating an individual. Implementation shall be based on a referral. So that's our law. Our current rules say that the client has to be referred to OT for an evaluation. So that feels like a discrepancy with the law to me. And then our proposed rules say clients shall be referred to OT for direct service intervention, but doesn't mention evaluation. And what Darby was asking for was clarification on how we interpret the law, and just to get that in the minutes, and whether we interpret that an occupational therapist can enter a case to evaluate a client. And then at the point where they want to implement intervention, they must receive the referral. Or if you interpret this a different way. Does anybody have any comment about this, about their own interpretation of?
I interpreted it to mean, just for my own personal practice, for the intervention part. However, as I became more aware of other people's situations and practice settings, and then reading the current rules, it did not say that. So I was always confused about this part. And so I'm so glad it's being brought up. I'm personally in favor of getting the referral for the intervention side of it. It would make it so much easier across. I mean, I don't know if easier is the correct word, but consistent across settings, if that was the case. That's just my opinion.
That interpretation would align, I feel like, with the way the law is written. And of course, the law, it supersedes our rules. Does anybody else interpret the Practice Act differently than what I just did?
I think I'm on the same page as you.
Okay. And so just to make sure that our proposed rules align with the law, let's just take one more look at that and determine whether we agree that it does or it does not, and we might need to tweak it during that open comment period. So what we have here is a screening section, which we obviously know we don't need a referral for. And then this section 4909 is called referral. And again, just repeat, OT clients shall be referred for direct service intervention for their specific medical condition by a licensed physician, dentist, podiatrist, optometrist, PA, or advanced practice nurse practitioner. So do we feel like that does align with the law? The interpretation here is that an OT could evaluate a patient prior to a referral.
Does the evaluation section of the practice part say anything differently about that? About
The evaluation section of our proposed rules?
like, yeah, this part.
No.
But it says if the results of the evaluation indicate areas that require intervention by other professionals, the OT should communicate this to the referring healthcare professional. Which we wouldn't have at this point of the stage of the process, but
That's true. It should probably be to the appropriate healthcare professional.
I think we might need to comment on our own rules because I think if we
We can
don't make
tweak
that change, it's gonna
tweak
be
them.
confusing.
We can do that. That's not a problem. What I'd like you to do is settle on the language you wanted to say. And when the notice of intent goes out, you simply need to I'll have let Lingwood email me something that is a public comment about it, and we will make the change before we send it to the Attorney General.
What do y'all think of section E is what we're looking at here, everybody? If the results of the eval indicate areas that require intervention by other professionals, the OT should communicate this to the appropriate healthcare professional.
Well, that gets, because you use healthcare professional in two different ways, what you're really saying is, one is the healthcare professionals, let's say they need physical therapy or they need something other than occupational therapy. And you use that professional term. So the question is it really the one that's the primary provider for the patient? And that coordinates whatever primary provider is coordinating the care for the patients. I think who you want to get that information to, and we just have to figure out an artful way to say that.
The OT should communicate this to the client's primary
coordinator of care.
Yeah. I'm writing that down right now. Okay. I think we should vote on this change. So this letter E would say the occupational therapist should communicate this to the client's primary coordinator of care. Does anybody have any comments about that change?
I agree with it. Is there anything after that? Or does that end right there on with G?
Yeah,
It ends
it
with
ends
G.
with G.
Okay.
I'm still iffy. I mean, just because, I don't know, this is just like an extreme example, but let's say we have somebody like a school or like someone at one of our work today, but so like we have a place here, ARCO, and so they have a coordinator there, like a case manager. So they would be the coordinator of that client's care, and they might call us for, to come see what we can do for that client. So, but they're not allowed to make the referral. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of writing the prescription for OT services. So I'm not sure exactly if that would get lost in people who are not at the meeting and not understand who the client coordinator would be. You see what I'm saying?
You mean that, because this is actually referring to that it's the OT's obligation if they feel like the patient needs speech therapy or something, then that it's the OT's obligation if they notice that to follow up and speak to some kind of a provider about their recommendation. But you're talking about the occupational therapist following up to get orders for themselves.
I don't know. I'm just, maybe I misunderstood the question that Darby's having. Is it that we want to have, do we need a doctor's order for evaluation? Do we need a doctor's order? Is that what she's asking?
Yes.
And I don't think it ever really says. And I
Well,
don't know if that would clear it up.
Well, that was because we were looking at the law and we kind of agreed that it is what the law says, that it says that an OT can enter the case for the purposes of evaluation. And that implementation is going to be based on a referral. So that is what the law says. So now we just need to make sure our proposed rules reflect that. And then we just noticed that under the eval section on number E, letter E, it's confusing for this
Right.
particular thing.
So in that
Because
case,
at this point, we have not necessarily had a referring provider just because we've done the evaluation. So
Can it
this-
not say the same thing as the law?
I'm not sure the law talks about our obligation to refer patients to other kinds of care.
I guess I'm confused.
yeah.
Obviously I am.
Well, I mean, yeah, this one isn't have to do with anything with us getting a referral to be able to intervene. It's just if they need another service, who do we tell? Like we don't keep that to ourselves. So I think in that case with the case manager, then the OT would just tell the case manager that they suggest that they get a speech evaluation or that they get a PT evaluation, and then they take it from there, whether or not, however they do that and however their rules are. But we've at least told whoever our go-to person is or where this person came from that, hey, this is what I recommend. And then how they do that is on them. Right? Because
I guess I just misunderstood what was being asked.
Darby just wants it to be clear that, and reflected, I guess, within the minutes, that our interpretation of the law is that OTs can enter a case and evaluate the client. Then after that, they need to get a referral. in order to make our rules not make that confusing, this letter E hopped out at us as making that potentially confusing. Just because it implies or makes it sound as if, you know, we've gotten a referral at this point when maybe we have not yet. So the suggestion would be changing this instead of that we should communicate the fact that we think they need some other kind of professional involved, that we should not communicate this to the referring healthcare professional, but instead to the client's
got you.
primary coordinator of care.
I got you. I guess I was totally focused on from the evaluation to intervention. Never mind.
Because it could be the referring physician, like you could have
Yes.
a referral, but then it also opens it up to be somebody else if it wasn't a referral yet. Kind of.
Correct.
I know we hate the word appropriate because that's not very, that's frowned upon because it's not specific, but could it be like the referring professional or some other form of healthcare professional that's involved in the client's care, who can direct. This is very wordy, but I'm just trying to get to the point, which is we're trying to refer the client to, for lack of a better word, the next most appropriate healthcare professional
That's
or
why
provider.
Glenn, I think we didn't have to use the word appropriate when we said the primary coordinator of the client's care at that time. Because it might be a school person, and you have to tell them that, look, this person needs speech pathology as well. And then they have to go out and get a referral for speech pathology or whatever they need to do.
Gotcha.
If you say, this person doesn't need me, they need a speech pathologist, and then that's fine. But you might say this person needs a speech pathologist and an occupational therapist. So you need to get a referral from the occupational therapist to initiate the real treatment plan that you were recommending. And that's, admittedly, it, traditionally was a physician, but in the age of the practice of PAs and APRNs, it could be a PA and APRN, or it could be a school case manager that's trying to get this young child taken care of, and then they're going to be working with the parents to decide where it goes. But your job would be if the only person that's really coordinating the care at that point is the school person, then that's who you tell it to, and that their responsibility. But if you're working with a family practitioner and his nurse practitioner sends him to you for evaluation, you send that back to the nurse practitioner and the family practitioner's practice.
Okay, so
Can I ask a
I'm gonna-
question? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Is the word should strong enough? I feel like, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Well, should is a requirement. May is not. May is permissive.
Okay, that's clear then. Thank you.
I think it does. It implies our obligation to make sure the client's getting all the health professional resources that they should be getting.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a vote that when the open comment period occurs for our updated rules, that letter E of section 4911 evaluation be changed to the occupational therapist should communicate this to the client's primary coordinator of care.
Second, if you need a second.
Yes, I did. Who was that?
Kelly?
Kelly? Okay. Any public comment?
No public comment at this time, Ms. Ingrid.
All in favor of that wording change, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we will make that wording change when we are able. All right, and that brings us to the end of the open meeting agenda. Dr. Van, we are going into executive session to talk about that case?
Yes.
Okay.
And we don't need to make any comment about the temp certificate in there too for the open comment, or we're gonna wait on that? If,
We already took the vote on that.
no, I meant,
Oh, yeah, well, we would have to,
just
Yeah, that-
adjusting it so it's not
we would
confusing.
have to adjust the rules, you're right, during the open comment.
Ingrid, you take care of the one about E and I'll take care of the one about the temp permit.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Okay, so I have to take a motion to go into executive session. Could somebody motion to go into executive session to discuss, an issue related to a practitioner?
I make a
This is-
motion to go into executive session, Kelly.
Kelly, and can I get a second?
Amy will second it.
Do we have to have a vote or is that just a first and a second, Dr. Van, on
You
executive
have to have
session?
all in favor, all against.
Okay, all in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
we will now enter executive, oh, any opposed? I'm sorry. No, we will now enter executive session at 11:40 a.m.
Just send them a few minutes to transition us and we'll get it going. Now, this would have to be do not really have to be reflective of anything because you're going to come out and make the motion. So all the minutes would say that you had a discussion and then the motion will come out in public session.
Got it.
If you see a blue button that says join, click on it.
I think, we are, hold on, I'm trying to get my mouse in the right place so I can just make sure that we've gone through everything with the minute, I mean, with the agenda, and we have. Get my notes that I use for myself for when we finish up. Okay, is there any public comment on anything, Dr. Van, at this time?
No, ma'am, we have no public comment at this time.
Okay, then, do I need to make a comment about executive session and just make a statement about that we discussed an issue of a practitioner?
You don't have to do anything.
Okay, great.
There's no motion, so there's no action.
Okay. Our next meeting, will take place on December 13th, 2024 at 10 a.m. And, this meeting is adjourned at 11:50 a.m. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.
And thanks
Thank
for all of
you.
your input. We appreciate it
Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
You, bye.